Do you ever just stop and listen to yourself breathe, or rub your hands on the grass to remember the feeling, or look at the sky, admire trees, or buildings? Buildings that existed before you and will most likely exist after you. Architecture is an interesting thing, and I've been fascinated by it for a long time. So it was interesting to me, and quite a coincidence actually that I discovered this film Columbus by Kokonada, who, if you don't know Kokonada, he is a acclaimed film critic and probably most known for his video essays, but he is a scholar of film. This is his debut feature, his first movie, which the film, quite simply, just to tell you what the premise is, John Cho goes home to, well, I don't know if it's home, it's just he goes to a place where his father works in Columbus, Indiana, which is famous for its modernist architecture. And his father was I think, a professor there, and he goes to see him as he's dying. He's in a coma, doesn't look like it's going well, and John Cho's character, he doesn't give a damn about architecture really, from what he says and all that. And while he's there, he is hanging out with what I assume is his like stepmom or assistant. It's the assistant of his father, played by Parker Posey. But also while there, he meets this girl named Casey, or Cassie, but I believe it's Casey. Her name's Cassandra, who is obsessed with architecture, and she knows everything about it. So they go around. The movie's basically the two of them hanging out in Columbus, Indiana, and she takes him to buildings, and they talk about the buildings and the history of it, and slowly they start to talk about themselves. She has a mother who's a recovering addict, and he seems to really not get along with his dad very well and doesn't even want to be here. He doesn't even really seem to care that his father's sick. They don't really explain a lot of that stuff, but it's not a worse movie because of that. If you didn't hear about this film, it's because it kind of just got overlooked. It was a big hit at Sundance and was a critical darling, but didn't really do that well at the box office and seems pretty much forgotten about now at the end of the year. Kokonada wrote this, directed it, and edited it, which is really impressive. He did it, and this is his first movie too. The cinematography by Alicia Christian is absolutely stunning. So there's two things I really liked about this movie. When I said there was a coincidence in me discovering this film, it was for a particular reason. There was a movie that I made, maybe, God, 3 or 4 years ago with some college students and stuff, an indie film I made it wasn't exactly this, but it was so weird how similar it was, that it was a guy and a girl just talking and meeting each other over a process of a period of time, a slice of life, and not really being romantic, just kind of, but it's more of a bond friendship to help each other grow, and disconnection, and I actually built the movie a bit around them talking at buildings or at locations, and wanted the conversations, whatever they were talking about, I wanted it to be the analogous or whatever was with the building. So metaphorically, the person would be talking about the building, but they'd also be talking about themselves. There was a glass factory in the town that was shut down, and I kind of, with my writing about it, it was the character. I wanted him to talk about how, I mean, he didn't overtly say it, but the idea was he didn't want to be like this glass factory that's shut down here in this dying town, and towns that can't modernize in a world that's changing to more technology, and certain parts of the country are doing better than others. And I wanted to reflect that there's these old buildings that show life and all that. But what I'm saying is, it was just funny to me because I really wanted to make a slice of life kind of indie flick built around buildings and people and relationships, and it was just odd to me how similar this was. So I guess I share some spiritual fascinations artistically with Coconada, even though I'm not nearly as good as this guy. Very, very wonderfully filmed. The thing stands out. One that really connected with me was that I think if you don't have an interest in this kind of stuff, if you're not into indie films or art films, as they're so called, if you're not into slower films, if you're a fan of the filmmaker Ozu and his films that are very much just life, and the still photography of a Kubrick, but just letting the frame linger, right? You set everything up in the shot and you let it linger, and you just let life happen in that frame, and you have subtle little things happen that progress a plot and stuff. And it's not really about plot so much; it's more about just being honest to life and human beings and exploring humanity. in a very fair way. Columbus does this. It kind of sneaks up on you. I'm not gonna lie. I'm sure a lot of people out there aren't going to like it, and I can get that. There was a film this year, A Ghost Story, I believe, that everyone loved, and I didn't like it for a lot of reasons. I don't think people will like this movie. It's just one of those films where there's not a lot of dialogue, and it doesn't have a lot of plot. It doesn't have a lot of stuff in it you haven't seen before. It's just pretty typical stuff. A guy's got a bad relationship with his dad. Some girl's trying to work with her mother who is addicted to meth. Her and her hipster friend sit there and talk about things, and they hang out at the library. But Kokonada sets up a premise early on. He asks you a question, right? At the beginning of the movie, well, not so much the beginning, but after the first few minutes, the main female character is having a conversation with her friend, and he says that there was an argument about that today. It's not that people have a lower attention span, which is what we always hear. Is that there's a lack of interest. It isn't so much that so people don't want to read books less because they can't focus on a book, because they can focus as much on a video game or videos on the internet or watching something. And then they say, oh, well, a book's more intellectually stimulating. Well, it really depends on what you're reading. But the idea was, is it just that we're losing interest in things, all sorts of things, everything we're losing interest in more and more and more, and we're losing on to things to cling on to. We're just getting bored, basically, with the world. The more modern we get, the more bored we are. So they throw that at the beginning, and they say, are we losing interest in everyday life? So I took that as a challenge from the filmmaker, saying, can you watch this film that's about everyday life and handle it? Do you have the patience to go through this? Now, at first it was testing me a little bit. I thought, okay, this is every indie film ever. Every year a movie comes out like this that gets way better reviews than it deserves just because it's well made enough, and it's got a decent screenplay, and it's quirky. This was okay in the 90s with me, and like Whit Stillman got big in that, and Soderbergh, and different filmmakers, from the late 80s and early 90s. But today it just feels a little dated, some of this stuff. But luckily, what makes this film stand out, and what I really liked about it, the second thing that I need to focus on, is the actual filmmaking. This is incredible. When I make an Ozu comparison, I don't say that lightly. This is genius use of photography and location. This wasn't a big budget film. He knew that Columbus was just a location. He said it was like a ghost town. It told its story itself. He said he didn't even need to write anything, and he had a story, and he's right. What separates this from so many other indie films like it that share similarities in the screenplay and the characterization is the acting by everyone, but in particular the two leads. John Cho's a revelation in this. I've loved him forever, going back to American Pie and Harold and Kumar. Very overlooked actor, great. Finally, somebody gave him a role that's worthy of him. He's so good in this. It's not really a character study, and I'm not gonna lie, it's a slight film. There's not a lot of depth in the conversations or what happens. You have to be patient with it. But man, it's when they're just I can't explain. It's the filmmaking. This is one of those things where the director, his style and form is on such a high level that he is overwhelming everything. The frame is a complete control. It's how stories are told. You may see a story 1,000 times and you've seen it before, but it's when it's told with a sense of control that you have to be grabbed. Even if you're not engaged by what's on the page, the filmmaker, you can't. He has your eye. I mean, he has you. There's nothing you can do. The great directors do that. Kokonada has that ability. He sets up these beautiful still shots that emphasize something in the room or something beautiful about the architecture, and frames the characters along with it, and lets these long shots go on. I mean, it's just a still shot with them talking and stuff like that. And there's this very subtle music score throughout, and all of it builds this emotion in a very organic way. And if you stick with it, it really becomes hypnotic, and it becomes like meditation. It really does. It does start to get a Zen-like quality about it, and it does almost give you the feeling of when you're walking around through a really beautiful place that's got great design to it, or when you go to an art gallery or something. It starts to get that feeling about it. You're just in awe of the shots. And I'm not typically just someone who gives a pass for that stuff. I've been critical of the recent Terrence Malick films and a lot of other movies that are just visual and not anything else. But it's not just visual here. It's what's in the frame and what he's trying to say. There is something here These shots don't feel just pointless and pretty for the sake of it. Like, oh, that'd be a gorgeous shot if we went up to that building and framed it this way. It feels like the buildings are saying something about the characters and their arrested development almost, how they don't want to move on. And they will be stuck like these buildings here that are showing you the hope of what modernism could be, but also maybe the flaw of it all, the indifference that comes after certain aspects of it. There's a lot of things to get into here. They have a lot of conversations about certain architects. They have a lot of conversations about art or place, sense of purpose. John Cho's character is not happy. In fact, I'd say he's borderline depressed. And I like that it's not a romantic film. I really thought that this movie was going to be all about them building up. I thought it was trying to be like Say Anything. I thought this was going to be like Diane Court and Lloyd Dobler's kind of relationship, but where it was a lot of conversations. But it really doesn't do that. It's really just about, it does that kind of lost in translation thing sort of. It's more about two people meeting. It's the meeting of the minds. And you know, I wasn't a big fan of Sofia Coppola's film Somewhere, which was just Stephen Dorff and his daughter hanging out in hotel rooms. And I feel like some people are going to hate this movie like in that way. They're saying it's just people standing around in rooms, talking really about nothing, and then it cuts to something else. But I don't believe that. I think it's just, I think the sparse dialogue's it's well chosen. You know, what words are said are important, and he lets the story be told visually. That's what I'm saying. The director has such a sense of control of the story and the way he wants to tell it. He's such a master of it, of how he puts these shots together and edits it and flows it with the dialogue going into another scene and all that. It's just so simple and beautiful and elegant, and people overlook the genius and simplicity, the elegance in it. As a lot of great cinematographers have talked about, like that people overthink it sometimes. This film, it feels like it has a lot of intelligence in its design, and it feels like the characters are very intelligent, so the design of the film complements the characters and the actors for giving very subdued, intelligent performances. And then you have these beautiful works of art behind you that you really can't take your eyes off. It's just the way that it's set up. I mean, I was just kind of, like I said, particular to me that I really like this stuff, but seeing it made me so happy. And I could take this very basic indie film structure and screenplay, because it's once again, it's how movies are made and told that separates them. They are a visual medium, and visually this is wonderful. It's a wonderful piece of work, how it's put together. It really becomes emotional, like I said, in a zen-like way. You really feel like you've kind of gone through something. See, in life, everything isn't a big event. Not everything is like a movie. Not everything's got this big 3-act structure. Sometimes in life, right, you make a friend for a little while, or you have a kind of relationship, or you have an experience that really affects you in the long run and helps you change to become a better person, or maybe helps you at least realize that you want to be a better version of yourself. These characters have that. They meet each other, they affect each other, and they move on. Now, one of my favorite movies to do that in recent years was Half Nelson, and I feel like it went to another level. So this isn't quite like a masterpiece or a great movie, but it's a really good movie, and it all comes down to the director really standing out. It shows that he can make several movies and be in control. It's just so focused, and it really draws you in because the actors are bringing a lot with a little. I mean, a lot. This is a very well acted movie. I thought a very wise movie too. And their acting, it just gets to that point where it really, you start to get to know them just a little bit more than you do characters that probably have more dialogue and character development in other movies. You only hang out with these people a little bit, but it's just enough because of the visual presentation and the way it kind of sneaks up on you, that by the end, I found the ending rather emotional, and I thought the perfect way to end it. Like I said, a lot of cliche stuff here with the parents, and you know, dramas go through these patterns a lot. But when films embrace just the characters that the director and the storyteller really loves, and the actors embrace those characters, it can always work for you. You know, Jim Jarmusch has been doing that for years. If you can really engage with the characters, you can go through anything. If you feel like they're close enough to a real person that you can buy what they're doing, you buy everything that happens here. He leaves a lot open. I would say this is a good version of what Zach Braff tried to do with Garden State, which in retrospect, now that I watch it, is a very ridiculous, pretentious, just indulgent, vanity project that I can't believe I liked at one point. That's just like, oh my god, even though decent soundtrack, it's just such a... This is the film. This is the more mature version of what Garden State was. This is more close to what it's less dramatic and less, look at what I'm doing, look at what I'm saying. It doesn't really spell it out for you. Some of the conversations are a little obvious. That's not denied. But critics love this movie. I was shocked. I mean, this has 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. Some people are calling it a masterpiece. I mean, it's raved on across the board. I wouldn't go that far. But I made this video because not enough people are talking about it. I do think it's one of the best movies of the year. I do think it's a terrific debut. And I love that he uses the setting, the environment of the movie to tell his story more so than he does with just the stuff that we're used to in American cinema. He tries something a little different from what's done right now. And it makes something that I thought was more engaging and interesting. Like I said, this film would fall apart if it wasn't for how it's directed and made. That's really what sells it. The music slowly builds over these images and moments, and it just absorbed me in a way that I thought Moonlight was going to last year by Barry Jenkins and other films. This film actually won me over. It made me almost hate myself that I like it. I'm like, oh great, now I'm just another hipster critic, neckbeard, loving an indie film like this by some cool Asian director. And oh yeah, of course I love John Cho. But it really is. It's just all these elements come together. Like they're all things that I like, and they're all in this movie. I think the actress and her performance in this, who I didn't know who she was, she's amazing. Just really good, really good. It made me feel good, and it made me. It reminded me of walking through beautiful places and seeing beautiful things, and it gives that feeling for about 95 minutes. It sustains that feeling, and I really like being in that place. It kind of also was like Wonder Boys. Not as well written, but that tone of Wonder Boys, where you just want to be on that campus and you just kind of want to be there with Michael Douglas and Tobey Maguire. You love how that feels. You really like Columbus in this. He really makes you feel like, yeah, I kind of want to be there. I kind of want to just sit there and relax. And at the beginning, the question is, can we just enjoy everyday life? Are you bored? So that is almost a cheat, because then he's going to say, well, almost I feel like if you don't like the movie, then you're like, well, you can't just enjoy everyday life. You can't appreciate it. But I don't think it's that direct. But the characters seem bored with everyday life. That's kind of what works about it. If you pay attention to it, I think the idea is that they're very bored with everyday life, and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to fit in, and she's trying not to be so modern with the world, and he's too much so, and he can't cling on to the past, and they're confused, and they don't know, and they look at these buildings trying to find meaning in themselves. And because if you can construct these buildings, these perfect things, can you build yourself up better? Can you make a better version of yourself? Is there a blueprint of you that you can make adjustments to, or are you just set in stone, like you are into the rest of your life? I would say that some people might find the movie boring because of its pacing. I mean, I could definitely see someone saying this is laborious, but I wouldn't say that about it, because when you go to films that are made like this, and I'm not saying this guy's on the level of Kubrick or something, but when you watch a movie like by a Kubrick, right, it's that same kind of thing where there is an emotional distance, there's a coldness, an objective view to things, and it's like 2001 has a lot of scenes like that, but it's him making sure that he has that confidence and control to keep your eye focused on what he wants it to be, what he wants your eye to be on, and he doesn't leave. And just editing in a very subtle way and having that control and lingering on the shot and letting it all be said with the shot. Like, the frame tells so many stories that whatever is going on with the actors and the dialogue is like, it's important and great, and that can heighten the film. That's what this film's missing, is that next layer that puts it over the top. Like, if this would have had a screenplay equal to the filmmaking, this would have been a masterpiece. This would have been one of the best movies of the year. I mean, I could have seen some Oscar nominations. Instead, it's going to be another one of those indie darlings. But I don't want some people to come back like, man, you recommended this boring movie to me. I don't get it. It's not going to be for everyone. I think there was this film Old Joy from years ago, where it's just two guys just hiking in the woods. It was boring as hell to me, and a lot of people love it. I thought this was going to be like that, but I think there's just enough character and story, and I think by not explaining too much, it leaves it up to you a lot, and it's more interesting because of that, because then you get to kind of invest yourself into the movie and add things to it and make it richer if you want, or make it more shallow if you want to, honestly. But I invested a lot in it, and I found that it was saying a lot of things, and there was a thesis here, And as you know, he makes essays. I felt like there was an essay here on many things, and I watched interviews with the director, and he talked about how he wanted to talk about modernism and things that he felt, and human connectivity and relationships, and is art important? Does it really matter? Does it have an emotional effect? Does that I mean, it does, but does that emotional effect honestly mean anything, or is it just kind of a lie? Um, it's just a building, right? You know, that's and I'm fascinated by those things too. Those are themes and ideas that I go back to when I like to work about things or think about things. There's a poetry to this film, a lyricism. It how it flows and moves is very much just great. I thought. I just really do wish the script had been. It's not even the dialogue. The dialogue's pretty good. It's okay, but I just wish that there was more instead of just these kind of cliche character arcs. I was hoping for a little bit more in that department. Not a plot twist or anything, because like it says, can you just deal with everyday life? I can. I love movies about everyday life, but I just thought maybe he would say a little bit more at the end. But it is just a movie where you meet someone in your life and they affect you, and then you move on. It's a Before Sunrise, a dinner with Andre. It's hanging out and talking about architecture at Columbus. It's a beautiful movie though. I recommend it just for visuals. Beautiful movie. I mean, gorgeous photography, framing, everything about it. Just the lighting of it and all that was just so terrific. Really impressed here by Coconut. I can't wait to see his next film. Hopefully he kind of stays this way. I think he could make several films like this and eventually make not maybe a Tokyo Story, but something. He could make a family drama like that film Yi Yi. I like films like this. I like films that are just about people's lives and families and relationships and friendships and characters. I do like that stuff. I love it. And at its best, this movie is one of the better ones in that genre in a long time. And at its worst, it's stuck with some indie trappings in its story. But for the best part, though, and luckily this movie is better than it is. There's more good than there is bad, and especially in that department. It just has such a way of drawing you in, with the power of the way he shows the story and the way that the actors present it. Those things together are great, and that deserves recognition. And I recommend the film off that alone. And I'll say right now, it's in my top 10 of the year right now, but that might get knocked out once I see a lot more. But my arbitrary rating would be an 8 out of 10. I think it's a solid 8 out of 10. I wouldn't give it more than that, but I really wouldn't give it less. I think it's an accomplished work. It's a great debut, and I see why everyone really liked it at Sundance. I hate to jump on the bandwagon with other film critics when they like stuff like this. I usually like to go a little bit against the grain. But I hate to agree. I have to go with film critics on this one. I thought this was really great and a gem of the year, and I hope it becomes a cult film down the road. It only has 2,000 votes on IMDb. It only made $1 million at the box office. So yeah, go find this film. This feels like a film that Siskel and Ebert would have recommended years ago. Anyway, like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what your favorite overlooked film of the year is so far. Is there a little film this year you liked a lot, like A Killing of the Sacred Deer, that didn't really reach out to a bigger audience? Let me know. And if you've seen the movie, let's talk about it. What did you take away from it? I took away a lot from it, but I don't want to spoil it. But if someone's seen it, I'd like to talk about some of the subtext of this movie and things that I thought. I actually think the film has more going on than people are going to give it credit for on initial viewing. But I'll have to set on it a while and rethink that. Maybe I'm overthinking it. So yeah, I'll see you guys next time.